Okay, welcome to Eat This Pod. I'm Chef Jon-Paul, and I am with my hearty sidekick Nolan, and he's sous chefing today again. He's in the kitchen, and today we're going to be addressing the much maligned world of veganism. We're going to be making a puree soup, and we're going to be showing you a very cool ingredient. We're going to be making a puree of celery root soup. So Nolan's working on some celery root right now, and if you check it out, it's just kind of a big old, it's a root. Okay, and this goes in the ground, and the celery actually grows off the top of it like that. Okay, so most of us are used to seeing this part, but this is really tasty as well. And we're going to use both. So this is going to have more of a richness to it. This is going to have kind of a cool little bitter snap to it. You're familiar with this one, but this is so easy to use. So I wanted to show you that as well. We're going to flavor that with some apple, some onion, a little bit of celery. I'm going to take one rib because since it's vegan, I'm going to be adding a bouquet garni down here, which is going to be my rib of celery with some bay leaves, some peppercorns, a little bit of thyme, a little bit of garlic. Because we're cooking with water, we're not using stock. I want to get some body and some boldness out of it. But the truly cool ingredient is going to be cashew cream. Now let me tell you about this, because typically when you make a puree soup, you add heavy cream to it at the end. But I took some cashews that we soaked overnight, and they look kind of funky. I soaked them in water. Now these are raw cashews. These aren't toasted cashews. So the flavor really hasn't come out yet. It's just going to be very rich. It'll have a slight nutty flavor, but not that sweet cashew flavor, because that only comes out during the roasting. So this has had a chance to sit. I'm going to rinse this out and just run some water on this real quickly. I'm going to use some purified water. Get all that stuff out there because they're not cheap. And I have about 2 cups, about a pound of cashews in here. And all I have to do is take a mixer. I'm using a Vitamixer because it tends to puree very fine. I'm going to put the cashews in there. And these guys have blown up to about twice their normal size. And I'm going to add water. Now, the amount of water that you use determines whether it's cashew milk or cashew cream. So I'm going to use just about a ½ an inch over the top of the nuts. So I'm going to throw this in. I'm going to put it on. I'm going to start at a low speed. This has been pureeing for about 3 minutes. It's super silky. All right, super creamy. Now, once again, if I wanted it thinner, I could have added more liquid. If I'm using a traditional blender, like you have at home, an Osterizer or something like that, here, try this, Leslie. Give it a shot. Here, no. If you're doing it at home, you might have to strain it out. The piece of equipment I'm using is a professional piece of equipment. It's going to puree it super fine. We're going to be using this to thicken this up. I can hold this for 2 or 3 days in the fridge, covered, or I can freeze it. If I freeze it, I want to make sure that it's pureed again. Now, these are all tips that I actually picked up from an amazing vegan chef named Tal Ronan. I had the opportunity of meeting him a couple days ago. This is one of the things he turned me on to that's just amazing. You can whip it. You can reduce it in a pan. It'll actually get thicker than heavy cream, and it won't break. All right? It'll just get tighter and tighter and tighter. Now, Nolan's doing a really cool trick over here that I also picked up from Tal, which was putting a little bit of salt in the bottom of the pan. And the theory is that it makes the pores in the metal tighten up, so that he's going to pour oil right on top of that, and when he cooks, it'll actually create more of a non-stick surface, so I don't have to worry about this stuff sweating and sticking and having to chisel it off the bottom of the pan. So Nolan's done a phenomenal job. Everything's cut just about the same shape, so it's all going to cook at the same rate. It's all in there. Now we're going to start cooking, start sweating that down in the pot, and while he's doing that, I'm going to grab some chives. I'm going to make some chive oil. Real simply, I'm just going to drop it in some hot water. And Nolan's going to start sauteing in our prepared pan. So to set the color, what we did was we plunged them in hot water, and they got beautiful green, vibrant green. And then I put them in ice water to stop the cooking. That also preserves the color. If I just took them and left them hot, eventually the color would degrade. It's chlorophyll. Then we're just going to take these guys and squeeze them out. Squeeze out all the moisture. Okay, so to make our chive oil, we're going to throw our chives in. They've been blanched and shocked. They're nice and cold. We're going to add some oil. I'm adding a neutral oil. If you wanted olive oil, you could certainly use that flavor. I'm just keeping it simple here. I'm going to puree it and then strain it. Some people will leave the herbs in if you want a little chunkier. I want to just use the oil. So I'm going to pour this in this adorable little strainer. Now there's air incorporated into this right now, so it looks opaque, but as it settles, it's going to become kind of a deeper, more translucent green. And this will be a garnish that we drizzle on top of our finished soup. So we wanted a little more flavor. So what we're going to do is make something called a bouquet garni. And a bouquet garni is that. It's like a bouquet of garnishes. In this case, it's herbs and spices. So I'm going to take a stick of celery, and I'm going to add a couple things to it. I have some bay leaves, I have some peppercorns, I have some thyme. I'm not adding any parsley stems because I think we're going to have enough bitterness with the celery. And I'm going to add a little bit of garlic just to round it out. So I'm going to put my thyme in there. And I'm going to put my peppercorns in the thyme so they kind of get caught up in there. And then I'll put my garlic in. Oh, back in there. That little fellow. Right there. Bay leaves on top. I'm just going to make a little sandwich. And then I'm going to take my string and wrap it around. And the way that I do that is actually kind of fun. I'm going to hold the string with my finger. Wrap it 1, 2, 3. Flip it around. 1, 2, 3. And then we'll tie it. 1, 2. It's called the butcher's knot. And flip it around. And the neat thing about this is, I'm going to hand this off to Nolan. Nolan's going to throw it in the pot. We're going to top it off with water. But when I can start to smell the herbs, I know they've given up their flavor, and I can pull it out. So our vegetables are getting kind of translucent. You can see more with the celery than anything, but they're getting a really nice look to them. They don't look quite opaque. So all we have to do is top it off with water and let it simmer for about 20 minutes. Throw our bouquet garni in there. Hit it with a little bit of salt and pepper just to get the flavors going. And it's almost soup. Okay, the soup's been cooking for about 20-30 minutes now. Nolan's going to bring it over. It smells absolutely amazing. And he's going to cut a garnish called a brunoise, which is going to be our beautiful apple over there. And that is going to be cut into 1/8 of an inch cubes. He's going to leave the skin on because it's going to be cool color, cool texture. And while he's doing that, we'll puree up our soup. Now the first thing I need to do is grab our little bouquet garni out of here. And there he is right there. What I want to do is start with the solids. So I'm going to start on low. Now this is hot, heat expands, so I need to be careful. But on low. You have to be careful because heat expands. So I want to make sure that if I don't have something like this where I have a little speed control, a little variable speed control, and I just have an on-off switch, I want to make sure that I take a towel and throw it over the top and then just kind of gently turn it on and off, and that'll prevent it from blowing out of the top. So there's my beautiful cashew cream, and we'll add a couple ladles of that. So I can actually add this in here, puree it around a bit, and I can reheat it later. And unlike dairy, I don't have to worry about the proteins coagulating and separating out and getting all curdled. All right, so let's see what we got for flavor. All right, a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. Now this might seem like a lot if you're used to using making soups with a lot of canned broth. It's got a ton of sodium in it, so you're rarely salting a whole lot at the end. But this is just vegetables. We used a little bit of salt in the beginning. And that should be perfect. Okay, so it's time. Here's our gorgeous soup. Super thick, look at that. Really rich. 100% vegan. All right, and you wouldn't know it. So we'll just finish this off. Here's our oil. Take him. Just a couple drops around. All right, so it's nice and translucent. So I have this really thick soup with a really translucent oil. Pretty. And then we'll sprinkle some apple on top. Excellent job on the apple. And there you have it. That's our twist on Tal Ronan's puree of celery root with Granny Smith apple. Very cool. The thing to walk away with, the cashew cream. Unbelievable. You did it again, my friend. Awesome.